So Brandon Moreno put himself back in the win column this weekend with a big win over Amir Albazi, a big win in the flyweight division. You know how wins in the flyweight division they go. If you get a good win, you can be right there for a title shot real quickly, and he's a former champion, and he put on a phenomenal performance on Saturday. So I definitely got to come through with a review and talk about it. So let's get into it. Let's go. All right, welcome back to another episode of Combat and Kick It with your host, Bando. Today, like I said, we're talking about Moreno's fantastic performance this past weekend. Very good performance by him. Very good performance by Aaron Blanchfield. We got to talk about those. I did a breakdown. Unfortunately, didn't get it out fast enough, so at least I'm coming through with a review for it. We also got to talk about BELAL Muhammad pulling out of UFC 310. We got to talk about another welterweight matchup that got recently announced. So there's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. So I'm not going to waste any more time. Brandon Moreno this past weekend looking sharp. Looking sharp. I did the breakdown and I didn't get a chance to post it, right? But in the breakdown, I mentioned that in the past few fights of Brandon Moreno's, like the Royval fight, the Pantoja fight, he hasn't looked as sharp and clean as he usually does. He doesn't look as sharp and clean as he did against Davis and Figueiredo, right? I said in the breakdown that he has to come through with a more patient, more relaxed style, come back, pick his shots wisely, be calm in there and do his thing. You know Brandon Moreno's going to scrap if it gets to that point, though. You know what I mean? If it gets to that point, he's going to end up just scrapping. But he looked good this weekend. He looked patient. He was picking his shots. His shots were clean. He was landing good. I mean, he was hurting Amir Albazi. He kept rocking him a lot. He wasn't swarming with crazy finishes or nothing like that. Like he was rocking him and kind of just staying tight, staying close to him, not giving him much space to breathe. And anytime Amir Albazi would land anything, it didn't bother Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno's got a fantastic chin, man. Fantastic chin. And there was a couple of shot takedowns from Amir Albazi that Brandon Moreno stuffed. Great takedown defense. He did really well on that. You could tell he came in extremely prepared. And that's what a former champion truly looks like, right? That's somebody that should be champion of the division, in my personal opinion. He should be champion of the division. But he put on a good fight. To me, guaranteed a title shot. But he proceeded to say that he wants to take one more before getting the title shot. But the question is, who's one more? Who is one more? What's next for Brandon Moreno? Who do you end up putting him up against? That makes, for him to say I want one more, that just means he wants one more fight. But there's not one more fight in the division that puts you to that title shot. Unless he takes on Steve Erceg, but at the same time, Steve Erceg just got KO'd by Kai Kara France, and Steve Erceg is way below Brandon Moreno in ranks. Brandon Moreno already has multiple wins over Kai Kara France, so that doesn't make any sense. Manel Cape isn't really, hasn't made too much noise. I think he has a matchup announced anyways coming up soon. There's really nothing crazy for Brandon to take, so why not just sit and wait to see the winner of Pantoja and Kaya Sakura? I think if Pantoja wins, there's like nothing, right? The division's going to be pretty damn stale if Pantoja wins. But if Asakura comes over from a different promotion and gets it done, that shakes up the division. That gives Brandon Moreno a new interesting opponent to go up against. I just believe that Brandon is number one. There is no fight another guy to get to become number one. No, like you are the number one contender. There is no other guy, right? Unless you took some fight against a guy on a come up, which I don't even know who you would try to take on the come up. A lot of these guys, a lot of these flyweights, they all do the same thing. They come up a little bit, they lose a fight. Come up a little bit, they lose a fight. Come up a little bit, they lose a fight, right? They all do it every single time. You got Manel Cape did it. You got Muhammad Makayev. He didn't lose, but he's got just all the BS that happened. He gets cut from the UFC. He was the flyweight guy that people were really predicting to be something. That would have been interesting, but he's gone. Manel Cape doesn't make enough noise. Kai Kara France is good. But same thing with Kai Kara France. He gets all the way up, and then one fight knocks him right back down. It's it's a weird division. It really is a weird division, but I think it is a division that you need Brandon Moreno to stay at the top of. Stay at the top of. You know, hold on to that belt. Be the guy running that division because that's truly your best bet of excitement in that division. And it's not that, like I said this in the breakdown. It's not that Pantoja doesn't bring excitement in the fight, right? In the way he fights, the style, everything like that, he brings excitement. The problem is he's not exciting. I know that sounds weird. His fighting is exciting. He is not exciting though. He doesn't sell much. He doesn't bring nothing crazy to it, right? There's no noise being made, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're in the division of, when you're in the flyweight division, the most boring division in men's combat, I should say, right? Because women's flyweight's not that bad, but men's flyweight is always an up and up division. It's a division that almost got cut. Like the whole division almost got chopped from the UFC. So you got to make sure if you're on top of the division, you're keeping things exciting. You're doing what you can to keep things exciting. And, you know, if Pantoja went out there in this next fight and got a finish, made a huge statement like that, okay, now some noise might start being made. But if he goes out there and puts on another 5-round fight where it was close and he wins a split decision or a unanimous decision or something like that, no one wants that. No one wants that, to be honest with you. And then real quick, just to shout out Erin Blanchfield's performance. She did really well yesterday. You know, nothing crazy. You know, I kind of predicted what Erin Blanchfield would do. She would be shooting. She would be working the takedowns. You know, she wins some stand-up exchanges just on pressure alone. She's pretty big. She's pretty strong, right? Rose was winning the first 2 rounds, right? Rose was landing well. She was winning the first 2 rounds. But you can tell 3, 4, 5. It's not like Erin Blanchfield just took over. She just had a lot of control time through those 3 rounds, right? I think in the 3rd round she had like 3 minutes of control time. So you know that really does assist and aid in you getting a decision win, especially when she just looked like she did more in those exchanges, especially on the feet. Anytime that they were on the feet, you know how Rose is. Rose is so patient, and that's a problem with somebody like Erin Blanchfield, who's right now hungry to get to the next level, to get to the championship fight. And when she fights like she is hungry. She's pushing the pace. She's trying to do what she can to get the win, right? Not the most exciting. If I'm being honest with you, her style reminds me of like a women's Sean Brady. Right, she's got a very similar style to the way Sean Brady fights, and that's not a bad thing, right? Sean Brady's obviously pretty talented, pretty good, top of the welterweight division, not top, but in the top 10 of the welterweight division, so that's huge. You know, I think she's just a very similar style when it comes to fighting. She just fights very, very similar. The takedowns, the way she shoots, nothing crazy with the setups. She doesn't have much when it comes to setting things up, but at the same time, she's smart. She's good at timing. It seems like that's what she's better at. It's not much of setups for the takedowns. It's good at timing the takedown. But she did well. She did well. What's next for her? It's a good question. It's a good question. I would just say, you know, there was rumors that Tatiana Suarez was pulling out of her fight. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if she's injured, what the case may be. You never know with Tatiana Suarez. But you could have, you know, have her fight that fight. It would have been against Verna Jandaroba. If you ever fight Jandaroba, I don't know if she's ever fought Jandaroba or not. You can do that, you know, if she's trying to get one more fight. But I can see her being number 1 contender. You know, I can see her being next up for the, you know, for a title fight, because that division is very stagnant as well. Not stagnant, but, you know, it just got flipped a little bit with Valentina getting a win again, you know. So a lot of people are like, should Alexa get the 4th fight? Should Alexa fight Erin Blanchfield, right? Should Valentina fight Erin Blanchfield? Should they have a super fight with Valentina and Weili Zhang? Like, there's a lot of different options that can be done. But, you know, when you're talking about, if you're like trying to follow ranks, which UFC doesn't often do, but if you're trying to follow ranks and be one of them, you know, perfect type of things, then yeah, Aaron Blanchfield was pretty much next up. But excitement wise, speaking of excitement wise, the most exciting fighter, Belal Muhammad, he had to pull out of his contest. Look, I'm not dogging the dude. I always do, but I'm not dogging him on this one. He got a bad infection in his foot, like a bone infection or some shit like that. I couldn't even imagine. The picture is pretty gnarly. It's pretty gnarly, pretty nasty. So I ain't posting, I ain't showing it. But yeah, he had to pull out against Shavkat, not fighting at UFC 310. I was, wow, dude, you are stupid. 3010, dumb fuck. UFC 310. I can't talk. But he had to pull out against Shavkat. That's a matchup that a lot of people want to see. A lot of people, including me, believe Shavkat can totally get that fight done, end up being the champion, bring some excitement back to the division a little bit. But unfortunately, we're not getting that fight in December. So the question is, do you call 1-800-SHAMA and you get Alex Pereira to get that short notice fight again? Because that man, you know, he will sign on the dotted line every single time. Ain't nothing gonna stop him from signing on the dotted line. He wants that fight. He wants a fight, and he tweeted a little phone emoji immediately as soon as he found out that Belal Muhammad pulled out. So I think, yeah, for sure, if we can get another Alex Pereira fight, why not? How amazing would that be if he came back again this year on short notice to save a card and gets another victory? That's automatic fighter of the year. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people have Ilya as fighter of the year. They're neck and neck, right? Ilya being able to beat Volk and Max Holloway, both finishing both of them, that's some tough shit. But then having Alex Pereira do what he's been doing all year, it's hard to argue. But if Alex comes back in December, gets a win over whoever he fights, but I think the other option too, like a lot of people are like, oh, well, they can do Shavkat versus somebody for the interim, but at the same time, there's nobody to really do for the interim, right? What welterweight matchup are you gonna do? Leon and Shavkat for the interim? Colby and Shavkat, right? Colby's nowhere to be found. Leon got whooped up by Belal for 5 rounds. Belal pulled out. You got Usman is fighting JDM, so you got your former champion going up against your new up-and-comer. So there's really no fight to make for an interim championship. Like, nothing that makes sense as of right now, right? There's a good welterweight matchup that I was going to mention. Ian Gary versus Joaquin Buckley. That's a good matchup because both dudes are young on the come up, right? And I'm not talking about like young on the come up, but like they're making their name in the division now. They're really starting to make statements. They're popping out. They're putting on good performances. You just had Buckley, who just knocked out Wonder Boy. You had Ian Gary, who ended up getting the win over MVP. You know, so it's a good matchup. It's a good matchup. It's a fun matchup. It's a main event that sounds like the type of fight night main events that we need right there. Those, to me, draw like those pull on free fight night cards. That's a perfect main event. That is a perfect main event, and I'm very excited for that one. And that could determine a lot of things for the welterweight division too, because you know Ian Gary's got the mouthpiece a little bit, so you know he can sell fights. The UFC will utilize that. They'll utilize as much as they can of that, so you can definitely see him getting a fancy win and then automatically needing one more fight to get to the title shot, or possibly being a guy that, if people keep pulling out, boom, we'll pull up Ian Gary, he'll be the next to fight. That, you know, that's how it is. When you accept fights, you take fights and you win fights. That's how it goes. So if he ends up getting it done against Buckley, that's huge. And same situation for Buckley. If he can go in there and finish Ian Gary, that'd be insane. That really, really, really puts his name up there to maybe not in a sense of the rankings of, oh, he needs a title shot, but excitement wise, it's like, oh, all right, I'd be curious to see him fight for a title, right? Like it's one of those things. But we just have to see what happens in that main event. But I think just avoid the Shavkat interim thing. Don't put him in there against anybody for an interim. And I know that sucks for Shavkat's been training, probably still wants to fight, but don't put him in there with no interim. There's no point. There's nobody in the division that makes any sense to make an interim with. You go with what you can go with for December. See what you can find. See what you can find. I heard multiple things that Magomed Ankalaev turned down 4 different offers for this fight. Says he wants to take the fight, but 4 different financial offers he turned down for this fight in December. I highly doubt Alex is turning down anything, and I don't think there's any financial argument to be made with Alex. He's sitting pretty. He's doing his thing. He's the biggest star in the UFC. But here's my other idea, my other thought. If the UFC calls Alex Pereira for December, and the plan is to fight Magomed Ankalaev, and they cannot get a proper contract in front of Ankalaev to make him sign on the dotted line, there is somebody who is weighing in as backup this month who will be in perfect shape to fight, who will be healthy and ready, and that man is Tom Aspinall. You can make that matchup. Look, I know it's a huge matchup because they're both top tier in the division, both exciting, both fun, and you just be curious to see what Alex can do in the heavyweight division, right? I understand it would be a difficult fight for him, but why not finish the year out with the biggest fight you could possibly make, right? That tops Jones and Stipe, right? A lot of people don't even think Jones and Stipe is that big of a fight at this point, and it's really not. It's just more of like just seeing the return of both of them because it always takes forever to see them. 2 years since John Jones fought, 4 years since Stipe's fought. You know, it's a big fight because you got 2 guys returning. It's you know, I would say The Rock and Hulk Hogan, The Rock and John Cena. It's a big fight, right? But people know, like, it's just big because of the namesake. This fight's not important. You know, this don't really determine much for me. This doesn't tell me who the true heavyweight king or anything of that. It just doesn't. It doesn't for me, right? It does cement a legacy for either guy, so I'm not going to argue that. There's points for each man to take that fight, right? Why that fight's happening on each end, it's understandable. But for our sake, for fans' sake, no one was begging for this fight. And no one's really like jumping crazy like, oh, this is the greatest fight of all time. And first and foremost, besides that, that card is cheeks. Cheeks. And you got my boy on the card. It's co-main event, and it's cheeks. Take a look at the card. So you got to come back around and end the year properly, right? I already heard the rumor that January was going to be Islam and Arman, that's perfect way to start off the year, right? Lightweight matchup. You see Islam fight at the beginning of the year. You might be able to see him fight again in the summer. You know, he is one of those guys that takes a longer time off, but you could see him get 2 fights in the year, you know, so that's a good fight for January. December, you have to do something. And if Magomed Ankalaev is not going to sign on the dotted line to save the card, to save UFC 310, to be the guy to step up on short notice, but Alex Pereira is willing to, and you got Tom Aspinall willing to, you might as well make it happen. You might as well make it happen. Because you got to think about it. If Stipe pulls out, John Jones is not fighting Tom Aspinall. If John Jones pulls out, Stipe is not fighting Tom Aspinall. So in November, right, if that fight, or we're in November, later this month, if that fight was to pull out, right, a few weeks away, if that fight was to pull out in any which way, Tom Aspinall is the backup, but neither of those guys are going to fight Tom. So what would the UFC do? Probably call Alex, and that's in November. If that doesn't happen, you still have Tom Aspinall in the backup. He weighed in. He's in shape. He's ready to go. Had a small little training camp, training for each guy. he'd be ready to go in December if you had to do it. If you had to do it, if you're trying to save the card and you're trying to really, really like stamp this year as one of the best years with big cards or seeming like big cards, then this would be a fantastic way to do it. Fantastic way to do it. It's almost getting to that point too where the year is winding down, so you know soon I'm gonna have to come out with my top tens of the year, best cards of the year, all that kind of stuff. I could already tell you like a few of the best cards of the year, but that'll be a fun one to get into and break down fully. Because if you actually look at some of the cards in depth, not just in the performance sake, but the way we looked at them before they happened, when we saw how stacked they look, that's kind of what I'm going to break down and see what lived up to the hype, what didn't, type of thing. But we got top 10s coming soon, even though we got a lot more fights to go, right? A lot more fights to go, but we got some top 10s coming soon. Can't believe the year is coming to a finish. It's getting close, right? It's weird because anytime I try to make a top 10, something else happens, right? So I can't start too early, but I also can't be too late. You know, if I started now, then you're already talking about I'm probably going to miss another 10 good knockouts, 10 good finishes, 10 amazing fights, right? And I'm not just talking about 10 fights total. I'm talking about that's just like the overall, like what I'm going to see, summary of what I'm going to see, how many good fights we might still have. But this year can end out being one of the best years. It really can. It was stacked cards, good fights. You know, some stuff didn't live up to the hype. You know, the Sphere didn't live up to crazy hype. It was a good card, but it didn't, live up to crazy hype. You know, you got this one with John Jones and Stipe that's been so highly anticipated, and you look at the card and you're like, whoa, what? You know, so there are some disappointments, but that's something we are going to be breaking down in the future. But that's it for this episode. If you want to, see all them top 10s, see all the things that we're going to break down in the future, see what we're going to end up leading into 2025 with, then you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification button so you know when the next episode is out, which is probably going to be the UFC 309 breakdown. I don't really know what else there is. I don't think there's any other fights coming up. So probably that breakdown. And I'll catch you on the next episode. So your boy Bando's out. Peace.